Hi guys, this week you're going to be writing a literature review for class, so I wanted to do a little introduction and kind of give you some thoughts about approaching this literature review. In the news announcement that this video can be found in, I'm also going to be leaving a few links for you to look at that summarize the literature review in a variety of different ways, and I think will be really helpful to you. So the first thing I wanted to do, since we're also working with images this week, is just put this kind of fun cartoon up about the research cycle. I think this kind of captures, for a lot of researchers, what this feels like to come up with a whole bunch of sources and try to pull them together, analyze them, think about how they fit, and all that kind of researchy stuff. So enjoy that for a sec. Okay. The serious part of the slideshow is really going to be the 3 ways of working with sources. So I wanted to put the literature review in context with a couple other tasks with sources that are common and that you may have already done or may need to do in the future. The first place that I see this whole engaging with and looking at how sources work in academic writing is really the annotated bibliography. In the annotated bibliography, generally what we do is we summarize sources, we do some analysis. That's often where we look at things like, is this source credible? How does this source fit with my own individual research project? So the purposes of an annotated bibliography are really often things like make sure people have read and understood sources, make sure people understand how those sources fit with their own larger project. It may be just checking that you've really thought critically about the credibility of the sources that you're using. Why are you using the sources you're using? How do they work? So commonly, especially in undergraduate work and then K-12 kinds of work, if you're doing an annotated bibliography, it's a pretty good check-in to just make sure you've really gotten the finding sources down. I've put the literature review in the middle of these tasks, and this is really where we're going to focus. Because the literature review is really an interesting kind of transition between an annotated bibliography and an essay in a lot of ways. In the literature review, you're still doing a lot of work with the sources that you're using in a way that goes beyond just thinking about the ideas. So the literature review really wants to look at the larger conversation of ideas that you're joining. You're looking at what are the dominant voices? Are there multiple perspectives in this conversation? How do they fit together? Where are the differences? And you're also looking for things like the gaps that exist in the conversation. So maybe a whole bunch has been written on one topic, but what you would really, really love to find out about is kind of scant on sources. Or maybe one year there was one perspective that was really popular and everyone was writing about that. And then in another year you can see it completely, the conversation completely shift to something different. So part of what's kind of cool about a literature review is that it gives you a chance to really trace the flow of the conversation and start really getting situated yourself. These are the major ideas, my idea is kind of in the middle here are a bunch of other ideas that kind of connect in, and here are some thinkers that are kind of where I'm at. So that's a cool thing about literature review, is it really lets you start finding your patterns and understanding the conversation. In addition to a synthesis, so in addition to just talking about what the ideas are, you're also going to be providing analyses, which is something we've been working on a lot in class so far. So it's not enough to say all of these people think this. You also want to think about those major sources you're using, those ideas. Are these credible? Are they current? Who are the people who are talking about these? Do ideas follow certain kinds of lines, whether they're ideological or national boundaries? Maybe there's a specific working group or college that's especially prolific in publishing in one kind of thing or another, or a specific thinker might be really prolific. If you guys think back to our American Dream conversation, a lot of you saw sources from Nicholas Kristof. There were, I think, 3 or 4 sources that came up, all written by the same guy. If you find that kind of pattern, it can be a really interesting thing to try to dig in and understand why that person is such a dominant voice. So that's kind of the overview of how a literature review works, and kind of the way I'd like you to be thinking about your sources as you write this literature review. So you're not just writing an essay. And when I say just writing an essay, that's definitely not meant as any kind of judgment about the ease of an essay. But in an essay, which is the final way that I want to really look at working with your sources, you're really building knowledge, you're sharing knowledge, you're synthesizing that knowledge with your own ideas and information and coming out with kind of a new kind of idea product. The literature review asks you to be a little more metacognitive than that. It asks you to really think beyond where your voice goes in to the big picture of what the conversation is. So don't stop at just synthesizing the sources. Really think about how those sources not only synthesize, but how they stand as participants in the conversation, if that makes sense. So I hope this has helped. Feel free to email me, and I'll see you guys on the discussion boards.